60 years after the events of The Hobbit, a ring turns out to be the worst nightmare that any Hobbit could ever have. Let's read The Fellowship of the Ring and find out why. Welcome back to BG's Books. I'm Mr. BG, and today I will be reviewing The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. So, if you've been watching me for a little bit, you would remember that about 2 months ago now, I reviewed The Hobbit, the original Middle-earth book by J.R.R. Tolkien. And even though I'm not into fantasy at all, that's my least favorite genre, I actually found The Hobbit quite interesting. Like, it was very good. It was quite short. It didn't have a lot of world building in there. So I found it very enjoyable for someone who isn't a fantasy fan. And I did mention in that review that I was going to take a little bit of time off from Middle-earth to kind of prepare myself for the Rings trilogy. Well, since I'm, of course, reviewing the first book of the Rings trilogy, The Fellowship of the Ring, I have, of course, decided that I am ready to read The Lord of the Rings. So anyway, I just gotta say, I felt about this one the same way that I did about The Hobbit. I found it very enjoyable. And but to explain everything that I truly love about this book, I guess I should explain what The Fellowship of the Ring is actually about. So The Fellowship of the Ring picks up 60 years after the events of the first Hobbit book. And ever since Bilbo got back from his great adventure from the previous book, he's just been like very rich and very famous and whatever. And he's also been very generous with his earnings that he got from the first book. And so 60 years have passed, and since then he has adopted his little cousin Frodo, but they decided to consider themselves uncle and nephew. So there's that. Anyway, so the day that we resume on, it is the big day. It is both Bilbo and Frodo's birthdays, September 22nd. And so basically half of the Shire is just like celebrating this. And Gandalf, Bilbo's old friend from the original Hobbit book, he comes to kind of celebrate with them and stuff. So then they're all having a fun party and whatever. And then Bilbo is turning 111 and Frodo is turning 33, which is like the age of adulthood for a Hobbit. So there's that. Anyway, so while that's going on, Bilbo gets up on stage and says a bunch of stuff about how it's going to be like his last night in the Shire, and then he puts on the ring that he's had for 60 years, disappears, and goes back to his house. But Gandalf finds him there, and then they just kind of talk about some stuff, and then Bilbo's like, I really want to go back on another adventure. I haven't been on an adventure in 60 years, but I loved that first one so much, so I really want to go back. But I'm going to take this ring with me because it's my precious. And, that's not like Bilbo at all. So Gandalf is like, whoa, calm down, sir. Chill out. And so Bilbo's like, you're absolutely right. So what he does is he just leaves the ring at his house, and then he heads off to his next big adventure. Anyway, Frodo comes back home, sees that Bilbo isn't there, and he realizes that Bilbo has basically left him both the ring and his entire fortune. And so the next 17 years pass. Yes, the next 17 years pass. Quite a long time, I'm aware. Anyway, so Frodo finally starts to learn things about the ring because Gandalf tells him. Basically, what this goes over is that the ring was forged by this guy named Sauron because there were other rings across Middle-earth that were given to different factions across Middle-earth, but Sauron wanted to rule all of them, so he made this thing called the One Ring to rule them all, which is the ring that Bilbo has. And after soldiers start wanting to keep him away from that power and stuff, this soldier named Isildur, cuts off his finger in the battle and slays Sauron. So he keeps the ring, and and he goes with this elf named Elrond, to go to the top of Mount Doom and throw it into the lava because that's the only thing that can destroy the ring, because it can't be destroyed by regular stuff. But Isildur decides, nah, I'm going to keep the ring. So he keeps the ring for a while, and then while he gets ambushed by a different enemy party, the ring falls into the river and isn't seen for a long time until this one hobbit guy named Smeagol finds it. Now keep in mind, Smeagol becomes Gollum. And so basically, over the course of however long Smeagol has the ring, he slowly starts changing into forming into Gollum that we all know. And then he's been hiding out in the Misty Mountains for however long until Bilbo found the ring. And so that gets us caught up to speed on what happened to the ring before Bilbo got it. And so basically Gandalf tells Frodo, it's like Sauron, that's his ring. It wants its owner back. So you gotta go all the way over to Rivendell from the first book so that you can discuss with Elrond and anyone else there what to do about it. So he's like, all right, I'm gonna go. But little do they know that one of Frodo's friends, Samwise Gamgee, also known as Sam, has been listening in, and so to keep the secret, Sam's got to go with Frodo. So then they meet up with two other Hobbit friends named Pippin and Merry, and then they head off together. And they go on adventure after adventure. They're just in the woods, and then they meet this guy named Tom Bombadil, who's just the greatest character of all time. And then they stay with him for about 2 days, and then they leave again. And then they find this village called Bree, because Gandalf told Frodo that he was going to meet him at the Prancing Pony Inn, or it's like a bar or an inn or something in Bree. So they go to Bree after a lot of stuff. They encounter these things called the Nazgul, which are currently looking for Frodo and the ring, so they got to avoid that as well. But anyway, once they make it to Bree, they meet this man called Strider, who, in a letter from Gandalf himself, is revealed that his true name is Aragorn, but he goes by Strider to the people of Bree. So basically, Aragorn is like, yo, Gandalf sent me, I'm going to get you to Rivendell, and then we're going to figure some stuff out. So then they head out of Bree and then do some stuff. And then on their journey, they get attacked by more Nazgul. Frodo gets stabbed and is now infected with some sort of Nazgul poison and stuff. Are you following me? I hope you are. So anyway, Frodo was very injured and they got to get him to Rivendell fast. But then these elves show up, basically scare away the Nazgul, and they get him to Rivendell. So after some resting and whatever, Gandalf is finally shown back up. We'll explain where he's been all this time in a moment. But it's time for the Council of Elrond, with Elrond, one of the elves named Legolas, a dwarf named Gimli, who is the son of Glóin from The Hobbit. So that's very interesting. Gandalf, Aragorn, a human named Boromir, and a couple other people. So basically, this chapter just kind of goes over all the history of the ring and what stuff has been doing. So basically, Gandalf explains that he tried to go see his old friend Sauron about what to do about the ring, but then, no, not Sauron, Saruman, sorry. And then Saruman kind of betrayed him and did stuff, so he was kind of stuck there for a while, but he made it out just fine. And so this is just a long chapter about just explaining basically what I've already told you about where everyone was, or what the ring's been doing for all these thousands of years and whatever. And so then they decide that the only way to destroy the ring and stop Sauron from becoming powerful again is to travel all the way to Mount Doom and throwing the ring into the lava, just like Isildur failed to do before. And so basically Frodo's like, all right, I'm going to be the ring bearer. So he's going to have the burden of holding onto the ring. Meanwhile, we got a lot of people to defend him. So he is joined by Gandalf, Sam, Merry, Pippin, Aragorn, Boromir, Gimli, and Legolas. And they are called the Fellowship of the Ring. Whoa, I bet that explains the title now. So anyway, they head out from Rivendell and head straight to Mount Doom, but they encounter a lot of hazards. And long story short, they have to take like a mine through a mountain because conditions are just way too hazardous. And while there, they get attacked by a lot of orcs and stuff. And while getting attacked by the orcs, they also get ambushed by this creature named the Balrog. So Gandalf and the Balrog go at it for a little bit, and then Gandalf does this famous "you shall not pass" stuff, but instead in the book it's "you cannot pass." So there you go. And anyway, long story short, you know how it goes. The bridge collapses, Gandalf and Balrog go down with it, Gandalf dies. So they're like, dang it, what do we do now? So then the remaining survivors, they head over to this place called Lothlorien, where they meet this, I think this elf lady named Galadriel. And basically what they do there is they just get like a rest and more supplies and whatever, and then they're on their way. And so shortly after they leave Lothlorien, Boromir decides to go a little crazy in the head, and he starts telling Frodo, "Give me the ring, Frodo, give me the ring." And so Frodo's like, "What? No, dude, that's really weird. I'm supposed to keep the ring." "I know, but just give it to me. Let me see what I can do about it." So anyway, long story short, Frodo is freaked out by that, puts on the ring to disappear, and then runs away to a boat. And so basically he decides that no one else can hold the ring because they're just going to start going insane. So it's better that he save them all from that tragedy and just go on the quest for the ring himself. But Sam actually realizes what he's doing and sets out into the water, but almost drowns. But Frodo saves him, and then Sam is like, "Listen, dude, I know you want to do this by yourself, but I'm not going to leave your side. If you are going to go to Mount Doom and destroy the ring, I'm going to go with you." And then Frodo's like, "Yeah, okay." So then, in the final pages of the book, they head off in their boat to their next great adventure, while meanwhile everyone else is trying to fight off the orcs. But that is how the Fellowship of the Ring ends. So overall, what did I think of the Fellowship of the Ring? Well, like I said earlier, I think it's a great book. It does have a lot of world building, and it is quite a bit longer than The Hobbit. But given the stakes of the story, I think all that stuff is warranted. It's like it doesn't throw all this information right at you at once. It takes many chapters to explain everything. But by the end, I think readers will get a very deep understanding of Middle-earth and how it works and how the ring works and all that. So anyway, yeah, I will say it's quite a bit longer than The Hobbit, but I think it justifies its length. The first third of it might be a little boring because it's just like either setting up the journey or just like walking and talking while on the journey. So that might throw a lot of people off, but the last 2/3 are just really interesting. You know, when they get to Bree and meet Aragorn and then like everything from there, it's really interesting and really fun. So, I mean, and then of course the movie kind of made it even more famous. I just saw the movie. It is a great movie, rather long though, but still it's fantastic. But anyway, so Fellowship of the Ring, while it is longer and definitely more ambitious than The Hobbit, I feel like it makes sense given what is at stake here. Because remember, this guy named Sauron made the ring to control all of the rings and stuff and control all of Middle-earth. And so they have to try and stop that. And that none of that was ever explained in The Hobbit. So The Lord of the Rings had a lot of groundwork to explain, and it's handled perfectly because Tolkien just knew exactly what he was doing. And I've also heard that it took him like 20 years to write the book. So there's that as well. Another interesting thing is that, I mean, I'm sure all of you already know this by now, but back when The Lord of the Rings was originally going to be published, Tolkien wrote it as just one book, simply entitled The Lord of the Rings. But World War II had ended not even a decade ago at that point, and paper production was very high. So in order to actually get published, he had to split his one book into 3 books, which are Fellowship, Two Towers, and Return of the King. I'm currently working on Two Towers, by the way, so don't worry about that. But anyway, so yeah, I just think that's interesting. However, if you go to a bookstore and go to the fantasy section, you will find a restored full version of Lord of the Rings in its 1,000 plus page entirety with all 3 books attached. So there's that. But anyway, so yeah, enough of me rambling. I just really enjoyed Fellowship of the Ring. And from what little I've read of Two Towers so far, I'm enjoying that one as well. So even though I'm not very much into fantasy, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings is certainly not letting me down so far. And I'm very glad I decided to read it. So please go read Fellowship of the Ring and by extension, the rest of Lord of the Rings. But yeah, that is it. That is the end of the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed my review for the first Lord of the Rings book, Fellowship of the Ring. Yeah, as I said, I had so much fun with it, and I cannot wait to see what the rest of the series goes through. But anyway, yeah, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff down below. And please feel free to talk about Lord of the Rings or books in general. I love reading your guys' comments. But anyway, yeah, that is the end of the video. I've been Mr. BG, and this has been BG's Books. And
hand it over. Hand over the ring. Hand it over.
You want my ring? Why?
So you don't use it to steal again?
Oh, man. Okay, that's weird. All right, I'm just going to get out of here.